in the grace and knowledge of Him who saves us by His blood. Let us put down roots to deep water. Let us drink from the fountain of life. And we shall be like trees planted by the waters, planted by rivers wide and deep. Trees green and fruitful, bearing fruit of love in the vineyard of the King. Come, let us grow in the grace and knowledge of God's Spirit by which we're sealed, studying the riches of His word. Let us eat of the bread that He gives, and we shall be like trees planted by the waters, planted by rivers wide and deep. Trees green and fruitful, bearing fruit of love in the vineyard of the King. Come, let us grow in the grace and knowledge of He who calls us by His Son. Let us gather now at His table. Let us feast on the richest of food. And we shall be like trees planted by the waters, planted by rivers wide and deep. Trees green and fruitful, bearing fruit of love in the vineyard of the King.
Good morning. Let's edify one another this morning, shall we? After all, that's what our purpose is, to edify one another as we go through our life here on this earth, through our Christian walk. That, and of course, to grow in the grace and knowledge as we continue about our Lord's will. Morning, Sean. How you is? Hey, good morning, Sister Maureen. Good to see you. It's a bright and sunny day. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. I look all around, see nothing but blue skies. Yep, there was a hoarfrost on the ground this morning. The fog out in places really made the trees beautiful. Morning, Sister T. And of course, as you have the case, there are plenty of drivers out there that don't remember the rules of driving in fog and blinding snow, and that is you never use your high beams. And so, of course, they're out there driving in the middle of fog and high beams and come upon you and blind you. And being light sensitive, that doesn't really help people. 2, 3. Anyhow, how are y'all doing this morning? Do something here. This is 10. So now I gotta find my. It is. Hello, Reba. How are ya? Morning. Good evening, Sam. I look straight ahead, nothing but blue skies. Hello, good morning, happy day. The sunshine's creeping in my window. Good morning to you. Think I see a Carol over there. Good morning, Carol. Good morning, Heather. Well, we haven't gotten started, so if you've got something on your mind there, Brother Sean, hit us up with it. We'll see if it's something worthy of our time. Just teasing. As I said, we're here for edification, so if you need a little edification on a particular topic, hit us. Just don't hit us too hard. Three, 5, 6, 7. Uh-oh, here comes the novel. Just remember the KISS method, Sean. Keep it simple, Sean. Oh, I thought you were going to ask me a hard question. Man, here I had my hopes up. Take us over to Esther, would you, Ezra? And we are going to go to, let me get the right chapter here. Three. Teresa needs some crackers. Polly want a cracker? No, Teresa want a cracker, not Polly. You know, that's a name you don't hear often anymore. Polly. Wonder why that is. We have a wife of one of our brethren. Her name's Pauline. Woohoo! Heather's really going all out. She's trying to plan meals, participate in a devotion, and trying to get over his sickness while being in a NyQuil fog. Not only that, she's also trying to take care of our favorite little Izzy. No. Esther chapter 3. What we have here is Ahasuerus has chosen Esther to replace the recently deposed or deceased, one of the two. We'll stick with deposed because we know that whether she was deceased or no, we don't know whether she was deceased or not, but we do know that she was no longer queen, so therefore she's deposed for certainly. For certain. Uh, Anyhow, back what I was saying. The recently deposed Queen Vashti. Um, so Esther is now queen, and after that, we also have had to take place the account or the incident with Mordecai and the gate, wherein Mordecai overheard two of Ahasuerus's um, guards plotting to overthrow, that is, to assassinate King Ahasuerus, and had alerted the king as to the plan, thereby ending their tyranny, or their rebellion, and of course their life. So what we find here is that um, King Ahasuerus promotes Haman, the son of Hammedatha, who is of the nationality of Agag. He's an Agagite. Agagite. Boy, try to say that one 5 times fast. Oh, the old Reading Rainbow, right? The 1990s version with um, LeVar Burton. Reading Rainbow, Rainbow, Rainbow. I can do anything. Just take a look. It's in a book. A Reading Rainbow. That's the best one. The newer one, I think they tried to reboot, and it was not very good. 5, 6, 7. Let me finish counting here. 8. Okay, so Haman has been promoted above all the princes. Ezra Star Sam's comment, and we'll get to it after a bit. Four. Me either, Heather. So in verse 2, Haman is receiving the accolades, the acknowledgement of all the king's servants that were in the king's gate. They bowed and reverenced Haman. But Mordecai does not give Haman that reverence. Now, we kind of learn something about Mordecai from here. Did we? Do we not? It's interesting. It says that on all the king's servants which were in the that were in the king's gates bowed and reverenced Haman, for so the king commanded concerning him. But Mordecai, who's in the king's gate, did not reverence, or did bowed not, nor did him reverence. Now that would imply that Mordecai was one of the king's servants. Sean asked, "Was he being disrespectful?" Oh, and by the way, Sam, if it's in question in regards to John 3, which we'll be getting to um, in our text, in is it two in the next three lessons, we may want to hold off, but maybe not. I'll check your question out and see. Um, so it implies that Mordecai was a servant of King Ahasuerus. He was also in the king's gate, um, and he refused to give reverence uh, to Haman, which begs the question: if Haman is of such a stature, why didn't he have Mordecai disciplined instead of going to the extent that he did? But we're not told. Um, Heather says Haman didn't have authority as one in power, did he? Question mark. And to answer that, we back up to verse 1. Ahasuerus has promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. So he was a prince, and he was basically a prince of princes. So, yes, he had authority, but evidently he could not, evidently, he was not of such authority as to discipline servants. One might say he was a governor, one of the advisors, or perhaps that would be a better way to look at it. Maybe he wasn't a ruler over the servants, perhaps, but he was a governor or an advisor um, to the king. Sean says he had a thing built to hang Mordecai on, but Haman gets hung on it. All right, Sean, let's not get ahead of the story, okay? Let's not get ahead of the details. You ask me a question, you're gonna progress at my progression. Not that I'm anything of any way, but if you want the answer, we're going to look at the text and we're going to go through the text and we're going to follow the way the text follows, not the way that Sean wants to go, but the way the text goes. So Haman is, and that's the way devotion works, Um, Haman then is at least an advisory, and he is premier of the advisors. Um, but he does not get to discipline or command anything of the servants. I mean, there's going to be some authority where, like, for example, hey, bring me some food, type of an issue, but evidently he can't discipline, um, because he sets about an entirely convoluted plot. In verse 3, the king's servants ask Mordecai. So the other servants, so if Mordecai is a servant of the king, his fellow servants ask him. If he is just simply someone who spends all of his day sitting in the gate, um, twiddling his thumbs and whistling Dixie, uh, then it's like, why would it matter? If you under do you under you see what I'm saying? Um, there is that aspect. If he's not a servant of the king, then it would stand to reason why Haman would be not able to discipline him, because he's not one of the king's household. However, as a prince, he was still due a certain amount of respect. But Mordecai refused to give him that obeisance, respect. And so the servants of the king in the gate asked him, why aren't you giving him command, or giving him respect? Now it's interesting. This is the reason why I believe that Mordecai was a servant of King Ahasuerus, because of the language used by the servants here in the king's gates. Why transgresses? Why do you break the king's command? Now, the king has commanded all of his servants that are in the gate to give reverence to Mordecai, or not Mordecai, to Haman. Ezra, jump over to KJV Plus on King, or on verse 1 or verse 2. Verse, yeah. Let me see. Let me start with verse 1. Um, okay, to promote him. Okay, verse 2. Okay. So give me H782 or 7812. I want to see what the definition is. H7812, in terms of reverence or reverenced or reverence. You're going to find it in, there you go. Shaka, which means to depress, that is prostrate, pay homage in royalty or to God, to bow down, crouch, do reverence, make obeisance or obeisance, to stoop or worship. Um, Give me BDB. Bow down. Keep going. All right. Now give me KJC, and I want to see if it's the same as used, or how many times this one was used. 54 times. Let's go to Psalms. Into the Psalms, please. I want to see about one particular. 111.9. Is it in there? No. Interesting. Scroll down. Wait a minute. What was that? What was that word up there for the first one? Is that worship? It is worship. Scroll down. Go down to reverence. Keep going. Let's see what else. Actually, here, go to Psalm 111.9, and I want to see if it's a sub of this one. Psalm 111.9. It's 3372. Bring that one up for me. Keep going. No. Strong's, please. Yara. See, the other one was, I think it was Shaka. This one's Yare. And it's a primitive root. Okay. So this one is not worship. This is revere. This is dread. Be afraid. Whereas what the king was commanding was worship. Um, Homage, and not worship as in worship of a god, but rather worship as in homage or respect given unto those in authority. But there is a tie-in because if we go back over to if we go to this one what is it 7812, and we look at that one, Shaka, um, they wanted him to worship or do homage to unto Haman as a high figure, um, and Mordecai says, "No, I'm not going to do this to this person because of or for a particular reason. I'm not going to worship this guy." Go back to the KJV so we can clear out all the extra clutter. He says, when they asked him daily, why are you not bowing to Haman every time he comes in? Why aren't you prostrating yourself? Why aren't you worshiping him? Um, Mordecai finally says, um, I'm a Jew. He didn't listen to them, and he didn't bow down. He didn't listen to them. It almost makes it sound like he didn't even answer them as to why. Um, he just simply didn't do it. And they, seeking to cause trouble, went and told Haman, "Hey, Mordecai the Jew is refusing to bow down to you." Sean, this is not the same type of worship, and we are to give honor to those in authority. Even God says that. That's what Romans 13 is all about. That's what Jesus says. Give to whom it is due, honor to whom honor is due, custom to whom custom is due, that is, payment to whom payment, taxes to whom taxes, etc. Um, so that is what we're dealing with. And Mordecai says, no, I'm not going to give this man that respect. 2, 6, 8, 10. So this is not a religious observance. This is simply honoring his authority. And one thing that we do know is that um, the Jews were very stiff-necked, and one may also draw the implication that Mordecai did the bare minimum when it comes to giving honor. Obviously, he honored King Ahasuerus, for otherwise he wouldn't have told the king, informed the king on Big Fen and what's his name? I forget the other one right off the top of my head. The two that plotted to overthrow King Ahasuerus. Um, Bigthan and Teresh. So there were those people who worshipped others in an authority, and we know these people today. Um, they like to hang on the words of everyone that they think is going to progress their cause. We call them, you know, um, well, they like to, basically we call them sycophants. They like to kiss up to the people that, if I might use the term, um, kiss up to the ones that they think are going to further their careers or their goals. Uh, there's a whole bunch of different names for them in the world, but um, so was let's see what Sean has. So is this worship? So this worship is not like worshiping God. This is worship like respecting the office, not person, as you and I have studied in the past. Um, that is correct. Um, I want to look at one other word in relation to this particular idea of what's being used here in the case of um in what the king was ordering in regards to um, Haman. Ezra, would you take us back to H7812, please? And I want to go to the KJC, and I want to check something on worship there. Let me see 24:1, Exodus 24:1. Okay, so God commands Moses and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and 70 of the elders of Israel to come up um, and unto the Lord and worship Him afar off. So in this term and in this terminology here, this case, this is the type of worship that was resolved for God. Um, this is the respect, and this would be the type that used in this particular context of God Himself. Um, this is the same word that's being used. Go back to the KJC, please. I want to look at Genesis 22:5 really quick before I go to Deuteronomy. Abraham uses the same word when he is preparing to go offer Isaac. Tells the young man, "Stay ye here, while the lad and I go and worship." Um, and of course, now let's go to Deuteronomy 8:19. Again, I mean, this is the idea behind the use of the word worship as it's used as worship. Um, Walking after other gods and worshiping them. That's the same use of the word shakah. Now, what? Let me look at. See here. Go back to list. We could look at First Samuel 1:3, 15:25. These are all dealing with worshiping and the carrying out of worship of God or gods. Let's go down to reverence in the list. Okay, so we have 2 Samuel 9:6, please. Mephibosheth comes to David and he falls on his face in front of David. And this is as David's returning back to Jerusalem after Absalom has been killed. And Mephibosheth falls on his face and does reverence or worships or bows himself. This is the respect. This is not um, the type um, of worship that we see in reference to God. This is the reverence that is due a person in authority. So you see, it determines the context as to whether or not we are dealing with worship or with reverence, respect. So this is context-wise. Take us back over to where we need to go, or, to our text. This is not a worship as in it's something that would be given to God, rather than something respect towards men. Heather asked, was Mordecai in the wrong for not bowing to Haman? And um, two things come into mind in regards to that, Heather. First and foremost is that Mordecai does not offer unto the Gentiles something that is reserved, he reserves for God, but he does. How do I put it? It is interesting to note that what was his command to Esther when he set her up to go try out for the place of Vashti? He says, "Do not reveal your heritage, your nationality, as a Jew." Yeah, teacher's pet. Yeah. Good night, Sam. We'll check your question, and I know you'll see this in the replay. So have a good night. Um, uh, so um, it's interesting that for the majority of their history, the Jews have always been looked down upon because of them being, as a nation. There were times when they were looked up to, and those times you could count on probably the on one hand during the reign of King Solomon, uh, actually, let's see, during the entry to the land of Canaan, they were feared. During the reign of King David, they were recognized as a nation power, and so they were accounted a certain amount of honor uh, because David was a mighty man. Um, During the reign of King Solomon, they were looked up to. He was a very prosperous person, a very wise king, and probably you would say Josiah, Hezekiah, and Joash would have been the other three kings to round that out, wherein they were looked not perhaps down upon and not necessarily up to, but they were given more of a fair treatment. Um, Now, um, was he wrong? As I said, he's not. I mean, they're known for their stiff neckedness or stiff neckedness. I shouldn't say nakedness. um, they're known for their stiff neckedness, and their refusal to bow the neck, bow the head, bow the knee to those that are not Jews. And one thing about it is they there isn't really a law in the Old Testament to give that respect to other kings and other nations. Um, there's certainly the idea that, for example, the Babylonians, as well as the Medes and the Persians and etc., were carrying out God's orders, and so therefore they needed to um, be submissive to him. But there really wasn't an order or a law, a commandment like there is to us today. There wasn't necessarily the understanding or the complete understanding that God raises the rulers up of these countries. Rather that they receive their authority from God. We know that they do because the Bible spells it out for us in Romans chapter 13. We also know they do because the Bible spells it out for us in Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 28, where God tells us to have dominion over the earth and over everything, over the sea and over the air. And, that means that we need to have even control over ourselves. And so that's kind of a foreshadow of government. But there is still a certain how do you say? There is still a certain separation between Jews and Gentiles, between what is the people of God and what they would consider the dogs. And there is also an element of, like we were talking about, the fanatical worship of those that go in and are bowing and scraping. And more than likely, what we are reading here is a um, expectation, whether intentional by Ahasuerus or not, certainly one by Haman, of his fellow servants of the king. Because make no bones about it, Haman, the son of Hammedatha, was a servant, even if he was a prince. He still was serving at the whim of Ahasuerus. Um, so he was, but there was an expectation of um, worship, as in, look at me, I am this great and powerful person. I deserve your adoration. And he was not receiving it from Mordecai. In other words, Heather, I can't answer that straight up, yes or no, um, because there's a side of me that says yes, he was in the wrong because he was disobeying the king's commandment. On the other hand, there's a side of me that says no because um, of the worship aspect. Um, the thing is, I want to make clear that while we are to honor those who are in authority over us, that does not give us the permission um, to worship them in place of God. They are not God, and they are not God's gift to mankind. They are God's. Um, one might say they are God's representative. Not representative. What is it? It says, "For they are God's." Take me over to Romans chapter 13. Um, Ezra, Romans 13. Um, Scroll down. In verse 2, whosoever resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. Um, for rulers are not a terror unto good works, but to evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of that power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is God's minister. That's the word that I was looking for. To thee for good. Um, Now, there are such things as evil governors, evil governments. Nero had was an evil minister, and there are times when governments change, when they go against the commands of God and do that which is unlawful and um, unsound. And we are called to be, still called to be in subjection. But should the government change, or should we have opportunity to restore the government to its proper place, we need to also do that lawfully, mind you. In the case of the colonies, for example, England was far too far away, Britain was far too far away, and there was not any government that represented the people well. And so the people chose their own government. And of course, there was the Great Revolutionary War that came about as this government came into being that we now have today. But even then, it is to be held in check by the government, by the people that it rules. That's the way the system was set up. And so there is a proper checks and balances that has been installed in this government. But we're not here to talk about that particular aspect of it. Was Mordecai wrong? He did not have the authority to change his government. And in a lot of ways, he didn't have the authority, the right to resist. However, if and when, eh, the more I think about it, the wording of the text actually tells us whether Mordecai was right or wrong. Yes, a steward and a minister are the same, can be viewed as the same thing. We are to be good stewards. We're also ministers of God. And no, it's not Stuart with a T, it's Steward with a D at the end. Just so you know. Back to Esther. I want to show you what I'm talking about when I say the wording tells us. In Esther chapter, in verse 2, we find out that the king has given command that the servants that are in the king's gate are to bow and reverence Haman, i.e., worship. Okay. And Mordecai did not. Okay. He didn't hearken unto the servants when they tried to get him to follow the king's command. And he told them in verse 3, or verse 4, I'm a Jew. Now, why is that important? Simple. What's the very first commandment as found in Exodus chapter 20, verse 10? Exodus, not John. '20, verse 10. Oh, wrong one. Go back, scroll back up. So, no, that's the second one. Keep going. Back up. All right. Thou shalt have no other gods before me, like Heather says. All right. So if you're not um, you're not to have any other gods before me, and when Jesus was asked what was the first commandment, what was the greatest? Well, what was the greatest commandment? Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, and mind. And the second is like unto it. But he says unto the devil in Matthew chapter 4, when he was tempted by the devil says, "Fall down and worship me. I'll give you all these kingdoms." And Jesus says, "Thou shalt worship the Lord your God, and him only shalt thou serve." So, in essence, while we're not talking about a religious service, there was still an element of worship that was supposed to go on. Um, and Mordecai interpreted that as in that they were supposed to give him the respect that was given, or the service that was given to a god or a religious figure, or and he said no. So I think that the wording in there in the text actually leads us to show that Mordecai was right in not. the more I think about it, the more I meditate upon the scriptures. Um, why is it important that Mordecai is a Jew in this situation? Well, because Jews were not to worship god, any other god. And Mordecai, which by the way is another interesting fact, there never once in the entire book of Esther is the word God mentioned. Um, but Mordecai refuses to um, do obeisance or reverence to Haman in the way that Haman at least wants, that is, to worship him as if he was a god. And so it has to, so Mordecai continually breaks the king's commandment there. We're not told that he doesn't bow, Sean. Scroll down, Ezra. I think actually maybe we are. Let's look. Oh, he did not bow. He did not bow, and he did not reverence him. Um, Probably because it was all part and parcel of the same thing. If it's all part and parcel of the same thing, if he was just to simply bow before Haman, he probably wouldn't have had a problem with it. However, since he was supposed to bow and do reverence, um, it was this, it was part of the same thing. So if you are called to bow and worship to someone, are you going to bow and worship? What I see here is very similar to what happens in Daniel, I believe it's chapter 3, with the account of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and the great image that King Nebuchadnezzar had built in the fiery furnace. Were they wrong to not bow before that image? Um, I dare say that there's not a person in this group that would say that they're wrong, or that they were wrong to not bow to the big old idol that Nebuchadnezzar had made. So if it's wrong if it's not wrong to refuse to bow and worship the golden idol, why is it then suddenly wrong to not bow or to refuse to bow and give worship to a man? The two are the same. It's equated to the same. If it's wrong to bow to an idol, it's wrong to bow to a man. And we have to draw it and put it into today's perspective. We have way too many people, and even people in the church, even our brothers and sisters, who are sitting there bowing at the altar of sports or of bowing at the altar of movies and actors and actresses or singers, and that's wrong. It's almost sickeningly wrong. I mean, it's sickening that it's actually going on when you have you know people who are brethren, and people who should know better, that are sitting there extolling the virtues of a sports figure, going over stats and what have you, or that are expounding upon the this movie or that movie of so and so, or how great an album that this singer, that singer did, and yet these people are living as ungodly a life as possible. That are no better than Haman the Hamaditha, the son of Hamaditha. And we could go on with almost anything, whether it be talking sports, it'd be talking uh, actors and actresses, movies, singers, or politics. Mordecai and the three men in Babylon knew the difference of what was being asked. Um, Sean says there are examples of folks being bowing to angels, etc. Right? They were told not to. Sean, you got to stop that. There is no defense. It is one thing to enjoy the music. I mean, listen, we all have histories. We all have stories. We all have pasts. It doesn't negate the words of the song and the meaning behind the song. But that doesn't make me perfect, and nobody should worship at my feet. And I know that my brother Paul Mays or my sister May Zapateza or Deb Hibbard or anyone, or maybe my brother Shane Fisher, we all would say the same, even, no matter who it is. As a songwriter, don't worship us. Sing the song, know the reason behind the song, the words, the no, enjoy the song and let it move you to where you need to be, where the song is meant to take you. For example, all praise to thee is a song of praise unto God. Let it take you to the point of praising God. That's what it's supposed to be. But don't worship me. I'm not worthy. Mordecai did not bow, and he didn't do reverence because he was a Jew, and Haman was not, because Haman was not God. And so the king's servants bring it to Haman's attention as we go on down the line. And this causes some really no small amount of consternation on the behalf of Haman, because he wants to be universally adored and wants that that worship from every corner. One thing about Mordecai is, as Sean points out, he stays faithful to God, and he has taught Esther, I believe, to be the same way. So as we keep scrolling down, I think we're about ready for 5. After bringing it to his attention, Haman watches and he sees that's exactly what happens. And Haman gets so stinking upset that he decides that nope, laying hands on Mordecai is too good. Verse 6. It's too good. Um, I've got to destroy him, and I got to destroy his entire people because they showed him the people of Mordecai. So evidently, it wasn't just Mordecai, but there were other Jews that didn't bow the knee and do the worship to Haman as well. So he sought to destroy all the Jews throughout all the kingdom, the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus. And so he plots and makes this plot. Now, tell me what you know right now, Sean. Is Haman a good man or a bad man? And hello, O'Shea. Sean says, I have realized this as we've been studying this morning. Wanting to be and stay faithful to God, there is nothing wrong with that. Shows who is in first place in our lives and many other reasons. ... O'Shea said murder wasn't enough. He wanted genocide to a man. Revenge does strange things to people. Yes, that's right. Skylar, hey, I'm glad you're here. Sean says, by this study so far, I really respect Mordecai's character, and at this point, Haman is the bad guy and is very selfish. Okay, so as we continue, Haman has decided he wants to totally, like O'Shea points out, genocide, totally wipe out the Jews. And we've got people today that still want to do the same thing. Genocide is wrong. And, you know, um, there were times when it was God authorized, um, like the Amalekites in 1 Samuel 15. But there's not a one of us today that is in communion with God to the degree that Samuel was. And so genocide is wrong. Sounded like Haman wants more than just attention. Could be. Let's keep looking. Haman seeks to destroy all the Jews. Well, that's not genocide, Hosea. That might be genocide. Anyway. Okay, so let's look down to verse 7. Now, the very first time what we have here mentioned in verse 7 is a practice called P-U-R, or pure. And it is what we would term, or very similar to what we would term as, um, well, there's a lot of ways to compare it, but it would be like consulting the stars, reading the cards, reading the tea leaves. It would be similar to casting the bones, auguries, consulting the oracle, looking for omens. It's rolling the dice to see what number, and deciding to do things by such things. And in some ways, it would be similar to casting lots. In this case, it was the cast per. So they would be. It's similar to, one might call it, asking the magic 8 ball. Um, Goofy thing. So they cast per, and that is the lot. So and so the Bible equates it to a lot. And so they would say, ask a question and determining basically yes or no answers. And he did this from month to month. So they begin in the first month, that is Nisan, and in the 12th year of Ahasuerus, and they go all the way to the 12th month, that is to the month Adar. Now, verse 8, please. And so Haman approaches Ahasuerus, and he comes before him, and he says, after having cast per, he says, "Hey, there's certain people within your borders that their laws are diverse from your laws, from everybody's law. They operate by a totally different set on a totally different set of principles and laws than the king's laws, and it really doesn't befit you. It doesn't help you to actually suffer them to live, because they're not integrating into your kingdom. They're keeping separate, and so why don't we go ahead and get rid of them?" So if that's what you want to do, here's what I propose. He says, let's write it out. We'll make an order, and we'll destroy them. And I'll go ahead and pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those who have charge of this business. I'll pay for it. You go ahead and just you make the order, and I'll pay for it. That way, it won't cost you a dime. And well, he convinces the king, doesn't he? Well, hey, that doesn't sound too bad. I can afford to get rid of a bunch of people that don't want to integrate and don't want to abide by my rules, my laws. So that's what he does. He takes the signet off his hand, gives it to Haman. Here you go. You have my authority to do this now, to proceed. And notice that here we call it, we've in verse 10, we now have designation of Haman as the enemy, or the Jews' enemy, the enemy of the Jews. Now, let me ask you, if Haman had succeeded in wiping out the Jews, would there be Jesus? Listen to what I said. If Haman had succeeded in wiping out the Jews, would Jesus have been born of the Jews? See, why does everybody always have to complicate things? I'm going to be picky. I ask a yes or no question, Sean, and you give me a paragraph, or a whole total, almost a novel, that that says no, but there's no buts. It's just a yes or no question. It doesn't need a whole lot of explanation. I'm being crotchety this morning. If if Haman had succeeded, there would be no Jews. And if there are no Jews, then Jesus couldn't have been born of the Jews. We already recognize God's power and ability to do things. That's how we can look through the book of go away. I know, go away. Okay, no, go away. Amy comes over here wanting to tattle on Amos as if I couldn't hear about him riding the motorcycle. Uh huh. No, you wanted to tattle. That's called tattling. No, tattling. If one of the kids had done it, we would have called him a tattletale. Yeah, well, one grouchy day per week. That's all day, all week. Um, okay, so yeah, back on. So let's keep going. So Haman's the enemy of the Jew. He's trying to wipe out the Jews. Does that sound like something that's good or something that's bad? Teresa says, "Shame on you, Amy." Sean's like, "That's not bad. That's terrible, horrible, beyond bad, evil, wicked." Now I wouldn't go that far. Amy was just one to tattle. Yeah, because he realized that Sean was talking about Haman, and I was giving you a hard time, and it's still called tattletaling. Sister T's rolling on the floor laughing. So is Sean. or at least he's on the bed laughing. But anyway, so the king said, "Beat you to it, Sean." Oh, so Levi Shea says, "Well, knowing God's power and truth, I'd say even if he did succeed, there would still be Jews that God protected." Well, of course, but King says to Haman, he says, "Go ahead. Here's the silver. It's given to you. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the silver." Um, he said, "The silver's taken care of. Behold, you see to the matter." And so they called the scribes. They got together. They wrote out the order, sent it out, and they all went home to supper. Okay, so scroll on down. And so they set a day. Keep going. I love this that they are going to. Okay, back up. They're going to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, young, old, little, children, and women. One day, they set the day. It's gonna be the 13th day of the 12th month. That is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. And so this goes out, and they are arranging this, evidently about a year in advance, and they're going to make this. They're going to make this happen. And well, of course, it gets noised about Shushan in the palace, and it just totally shell shocked everybody in Shushan and its suburbs. All right. Now let's stay within the confines here, guys. Let's stay on the ranch. We're not going to go off and wander off into the weeds and talk about the power of God, because we already know that the power of God is awesome and limitless, and things didn't turn out that way. As you proceed through the account of the store, or the account of Haman, what you find is every day, or every turn, he's casting pure, and he's making sure that everything is going according to plan. But he's getting more and more antsy in chapter 4. Um, Mordecai has taken off his regular clothes, put on burlap, and burlap or sackcloth is not pleasant. It's a very coarse material. It is a very itchy material, especially when it gets hot out. Um, and he's, just basically he's thrown ashes around. He's a terrible mess, and he can no longer serve in the gate because, well, it's against the king's command for anyone in sackcloth and ashes to be in the king's gate. Now, he came before the king's gate, but he couldn't enter it like he had before. Um, all right. And all the Jews of the nation, except Queen Esther, essentially do the same thing. Many of them weeping and laying in sackcloth and ashes, bemoaning this fact that they're about to die. And the news reaches Esther, and she's like, "Okay, why is Mordecai in such clothing?" She sends him fresh clothing so that he can array himself and come into the king's gate, but he refuses to do that. And he instead sends word through Hatak, the king's chamberlain, who has been given charge over Esther, um, and says, "Here's the reason." And he sends a copy of the notice, as it were, um, or he tells the notice. And then he gives an order to Esther. You need to go in to the king and plead for your people. You must now reveal your heritage. And of course, Esther's like, well, how can I? He's not, he's not called for me. And so if I go in and he doesn't extend that scepter to me, then I'm dead meat. We're way on down. Right there, actually. And Mordecai comes back and says, "Don't think you're going to escape because you're going to die just like the rest of us. Just because you're in queen in the palace does not does not protect you from the death that is going to be perpetrated by Haman." And he says, "If you hold your peace at this time, there will deliverance will arise from somewhere else. But you and your entire house, your father's house, well, it's all going to be destroyed." And think of it this way, Esther. Perhaps, just perhaps, for this reason alone, you were raised to the position you are in right now. I tell you, this verse here really gives me pause and help. And when I think of other people that are people that try to give me uh, clothing or other blessings for my kids and stuff, because you know how is it that I can help other people? How is it that people are helping me? Perhaps this is why I'm receiving this, is because this is God's way of helping me, and it's God's blessing for me. And perhaps, just perhaps, by my being in this particular position, I can help someone else. Um, and that's kind of what I look at with my bus driving job. That's why I look at it with me being here, for example, trying to edify each and every one of you. Perhaps, just perhaps, this is the way God is using me to help people. And your situations are unique to you, but we should be really looking for the ways that God has called us to serve in the capacity with which we are in, and the lessons that we need to learn from the capacities that we are in. You see, Samuel was given over to be raised by Eli, the high priest, because his mother was barren and God heard her cries, and she promised God and she fulfilled her promise. He was raised up at that point in time to be a prophet over Israel. Samson, and we could go on looking at any figure within the Bible and see how God raised them up to meet a specific challenge or time. And they didn't know that at the time until they were well within that particular era or that particular event. Jeremiah being called a prophet, and or Amos or Nehemiah going from cupbearer to the king to being governor over Israel during the return. Um, David going from being from being a shepherd to being a warrior to being king over Israel. And you can go through and look at each one of the judges, for example. Peter going from being a fisherman to being a fisher of men. We don't know the impact that we may have, and we need to be aware and cognizant of exactly what purpose or of how we can serve other people in whatever position we're in. If we're called in, if we're working a job, do it because, as if we are serving God, because we are serving God. He is our ultimate boss. And find ways to help people within the confines of our job. If we're at home, again, find ways to help people within the confines of our home. Run. That's not running. I'm techless for a moment, guys. So, eh, exciting. Um, Mordecai told Esther, think that you're going to escape because perhaps this is the exact reason that you were raised to the position that you are in. And if you don't stand, deliverance will come from somewhere. You see the faith of Mordecai in the working of God right here. And even though he doesn't mention it, he attributes, you see the implications of it. You see his faith working overtime or working so deeply here. He doesn't, even though he doesn't mention God once, it is implied and it is seen. So, based on all of that, um, then she, of course, goes into King Ahasuerus after she beseeches uh, Haman, or not Haman, Mordecai to pray for her. She has him spread the news throughout the entirety of the Jewish community throughout Shushan, the palace. Now, remember, when we're talking about Shushan, the palace, we're talking not just about a building, but we're talking about the entire city that is surrounding, because the palace is only is a building, but it's also an entire community, a city that surrounds it, that supplies all of it. We're talking shops for food, shops for clothing. I mean, there's tailors there. There's merchants of all sorts for spices, for produce, for animals, for you know um, armor, for weapons, you name it, it's there. And there's temples and what have you going on around. This is an entire city, and there is within the city a Jewish element. And so Mordecai spreads the word, and the Jews all come together, or all for one purpose. And I'm not saying they assemble into one place, rather, but that they are united in purpose of praying for Queen Esther as she prepares to take up uh, their cause before King Ahasuerus. And meanwhile, their enemy is not lax either. He continues to cast pure, and he continues to go about planning. And we know from the other, from the following passages, that he hatches a plot because things are not moving fast enough in regards to Haman. He is still going. Every time he goes through that gate, he sees Mordecai um, standing there, refusing to give any respect and worship to him. And do you blame Mordecai after hearing about the plan to kill him? Of course not. So So there's a refusal, and so the things aren't moving fast enough. So that Haman decides, on the advice of his wife Zeresh and his friends, that he's going to go ahead and build a gallows. Now, what is a gallows? Gallows basically is, let's let's put it in perspective. Um, Imagine a great big doorway, huge doorway. We're dealing with something that is probably 9 to 12 feet in height. I think it actually does tell us how high it was. I don't have those numbers right off the top of my head. But it is essentially a doorway, and it has your poles on either side with a cross member at the top. And this one would have bracings on the pole uprights so that it doesn't tip over. It will have a platform on it so that you can reach uh, a certain implement, i.e., the rope that comes down off of the cross member at the very top. In which would have a noose on it, and the victim would put their head in that said noose, and any support would be dropped out from underneath them. That is what a gallows is. Um, yeah, well, that's not necessarily exactly what it means here in this term. Um, it's definitely for weighing heavy objects, i.e., people and their bodies. In this term, if we look at it, Ezra, are you back? Go over to, let's see here. Um, 7, I think. No, I want to see where that is that he's drawing. He's building that. See if I can find it here. 5:14, chapter 5, verse 14. O'Shea says you can see them in westerns and in several movies. Yes, and they usually in those westerns, as well as in some of the older movies regarding like the French Revolution, etc. You would see them have a trap door in the middle. Now, KJV Plus, please look at the word gallows in verse 14. Zeresh advises him to have the gallows made. There it is, 6086. Yes, they did have one in the Pirates of the Caribbean, Sheo, especially where they are talking about, in a couple of them actually, because there was the scene where they were going to hang Jack Sparrow, and then there was the scene where I think it was in the Compass one where they were talking about they had all the people lined up and the people begin to sing because there was so many executions. Um, 8, a tree from its firmness, hence wood, plural sticks. Carpenter, gallows, helve, pine plank. Okay, wood. Yay, a tree. Go over to BDB. There are different styles, yes. Um, I forget, Sean. Did you ever see the movie, any of the movies regarding the um, um, oh, what is it? Is it the Mockingjay? What is that one, Ezra? Do you remember? Well, anyway, never mind. There's a song that comes from it, and they go, "Are you coming to the tree?" And of course, it's talking about the hanging tree. But all right, yeah. So basically, it's a bunch of trees. Let a bunch of trees be built, or let a tree be built. Um, Hunger Games. Thank you. Um, but it's talking about the hanging tree. Thank you. Um, and it's where they would hang people. In the old westerns, that's exactly what they used to do. They'd find the nearest tree, and the kangaroo court would hang people from it. Um, and that's what this is. It's essentially just a construct built for the purpose of hanging people and hanging them until they're dead. That sounds like a weird thing to say, but it has certain meaning. Anyhow, so things weren't moving fast enough for Haman, and so Zeresh says, "Okay, well then let's build some gallows, and then you can go in and ask the king for permission to hang Mordecai." And and so that's how that proceeds. Now, again, um, the rest of the chapter, the rest of the book is all about how Esther saves her people. Essentially, how real in reality, it's about how God saves the Jews through Esther. Um, based on this, which one is righteous? Mordecai, the uncle of Esther, or Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, prince of the realm? Never watched Lonesome Dove, but I've seen many Western movies. Anyhow, neither here nor there. So, which one do you think is is righteous? Mordecai, uncle of Esther, uncle and adoptive father of Esther, or Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, prince of the realm? All right, Haman is evil, Mordecai is good, says Sean. Anybody else want to weigh in? Or anybody else have anything different? Maureen says Mordecai was not prideful like Haman. The ultimate end is that instead of the enemies of the Jews wiping out the Jews, because of the intercession of Esther, the Jews were allowed to defend themselves on the day wherein the enemies were allowed to come and kill them. So, under Haman, the Jews were not allowed to defend themselves, and so it would have been a total slaughter. Because of Esther, the Jews were allowed to defend themselves. And so, what would have been a slaughter instead turned into a reverse slaughter. And anyone who dared to come after the Jews instead was killed. And there was a tremendous slaughter, a reversal, so much so that King Ahasuerus was stunned at how many people hated the Jews, how many people the Jews killed. And it was a case of over 2 days, not one. So they were able to reverse the fortunes. And in regards to Haman, what is particularly of note is that Haman tried to save his skin, but was removed for two reasons. First off, because he sought to destroy the Jews, who were the people, which included Queen Esther. But also, the second reason was because he assaulted Queen Esther. It was a total misreading of the events by King Ahasuerus. But remember, when Queen Esther revealed that she was a Jew to King Ahasuerus in chapter 7, chapter 7, verse 2, the king asks Esther, okay, what's your petition? And Queen Esther says, King, basically, husband, if I've found favor in your sight, save me. Let my life be given to me. May I have my life, please? May I be allowed to continue to live? And my people, may they be continued to allowed to live? Because we're sold. We're destined for death. If we'd been just sold for bondsmen, I wouldn't have said anything. But instead, you know, instead we're being sold to die. Yeah, we still got another 5 minutes yet, Teresa. Um, and the king was stunned. Who? What? Who's trying to kill you? Remember, the king really loves Esther. I mean, the king really has been bitten by the love bug for Queen Esther. And so he's like, "Who is this? Who is this? Who's trying to kill you?" And I mean, he's upset. Who is he, and where is he that dost presume in his heart to even attempt to kill you, to do this? And Esther says, "It's Haman. It's wicked Haman." Remember, the Bible's its own best interpreter, Sean? The Bible answers your question, doesn't it? It says it right there, verse 6. Is Haman the good guy or the bad guy? Yeah, maybe you should have kept reading, right? Yeah, it's Haman sitting right over there. And the king, he's so upset because now he sees through the lies, through the deceit that Haman has practiced upon him. In a lot of ways, King Ahasuerus is very similar to King Darius. Why do you keep shacking your head? I don't know why you keep shacking your head. You should shake it rather than shack it. That shacking sounds painful. Uh, I love autocorrect. It just makes so many fun, such fun. Um, so the king, he is so mad, and just like I mean, and King Darius was so upset when he saw the deceit that his princes had practiced upon him in the case of Daniel and prayer. Well, King Ahasuerus goes out in the garden to control himself. What's he do with his temper? He takes a walk to control himself. And so when he comes back in, there's Haman. And he is so desperate to save his life, he is basically fallen upon Queen Esther in his effort to plead with her. And you see him, he's fallen, you basically see the scene, he's fallen to his knees to plead and to beg, "Please, please, queen." And he crab walks over and just is grasping at her, "Please don't, please save me." And he was fallen upon the bed where Esther was, verse 8. And the king, he misreads it. He reads it as that Haman's trying to force, or in other words, rape the queen. before him, and that was the death knell for Haman. Will he force the queen also before me in the house? And he speaks the word, and Haman's face is covered. They grab him, cover his face, and take him out of out of the room. And that's when the king learns about the gallows that Haman has built, 50 cubits high, 50 times 18. See if I got my calculator somewhere around here. I know I have it. There it is. "75 feet tall, by the way. Those gallows are 75 feet tall. That's the minimum, by the way. I think the royal cubit is somewhere right in the neighborhood of 20 inches to 24 inches. So I forget the exact one, whether it's there's two different cubits. There's the royal and then there's the regular. And the regular or the unofficial or whatever is like 18 inches. It's the one I most commonly known. It's the length between the tip of a man's forefinger here and his elbow, 18 inches. And then the other one is either 20 inches or 2 feet. I don't remember which. Um, so we're looking at 75 feet tall, roughly. And it's in his courtyard. And like I said, ultimately, the end was death for Haman, for his entire household. He was not allowed a name. No one was allowed to carry his name on. So the end of the seed of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the son of the Agagites, was right there. There was no child left to him. So hopefully you have been edified and I have answered your questions. Ezra, we're going to want to copy Sam's for a future um, for a future off the cuff. You might say that, Sean, but anyway, hopefully you've been edified. Let's go to God in prayer. Our Father God in heaven, we come before you amazed at the way that you work in the kingdoms of men. We see your hand through the life of Esther, the life of Mordecai, and how you saved your people from their imminent destruction at the hands of Haman. Father, we recognize the lesson there that if you are able to save them, then you are certainly able to save us from those who would seek our harm. We thank you for this lesson. We also recognize the lesson, Father, that you put us in the positions where we can do good to other people. and to help and be a help to other people. And we pray that you would open our eyes to see the ways wherein we can help other people and be that blessing, your blessing to them. May we in our lives shine your glory into other people's, that you may be glorified in all that we do. We do not desire the praise, the glory, or the honor that is due you, for you alone are worthy. Lead us in the ways of righteousness. Lead us to those who are seeking. It is our prayer this day. In Christ's name, amen. All right. Again, hopefully you have been edified, and hopefully this has brought a deeper understanding and uh, realization that God puts us to where we can be of most service to other people. Let us be a blessing to those around us. Let us edify them as God gives us opportunity. And as we do so, won't you add to your faith devotion? I'll see you then. God bless in your walk with Him. I love you.